Hello machine shop friends, and welcome to the winter hideout down here where I am for a couple months. I brought some parts with me to make for the lathe steam engine that we're rebuilding in the New York shop, and I'll show you how that went. And also to show you what you can do with one of these cheap little Atlas lathes if you put your mind to it. They built these things by the thousands, and they're actually pretty good lathes if you realize their limitations and have some decent tooling for them. So we'll get on to that. I hope you enjoy the video and leave me a comment. We'll catch you on the next time around. On the off season here in Florida, I decided to make a few parts for the lathe steam engine that I'm rebuilding up north, and one of the things was this fitting here that goes through the back end of the cylinder and through the frame. Has a nut that screws on here, and then the piston rod runs through this. There's a packing gland that screws on here with a nut to tighten it down, and this nut is not made very well. It's very loose on the threads. It's kind of beat up, and you can see it's not even bored straight with the outside of it. So I brought down a piece of steel that I had. In fact, it was the only piece of steel I had in the shop that would work, and I managed to cut it wrong. So I don't know, it's one of those things where you're just not thinking. I was thinking octagon. I needed it to be 2.5 inches. Take a 2.5 inch wrench like this one. So I cut it 2.5 inches thinking I could knock the corners off and make a hex out of it. Well, you can't do that, because with a hex the points stick out beyond the width here. Like an octagon laid out like this, it would work, but a hexagon won't. So I had to buy another piece of steel. This stuff ain't cheap anymore, you know. So to lay that out, I found the center and then scribed a circle 2.5 inches and put 60-degree angles using a protractor here like this, and I got it laid out. And of course, not having too much to work with down here, I'm going to cut this out with a bandsaw and file finish it, and then put this in the lathe, bore it, and thread it for this pitch, whatever it is. I haven't even measured it yet. So that will make a nice job out of this. And also, I needed some way to seal this up. This goes against the back of the back cylinder head, so it's got to be steam tight. And I thought, well, you know, probably originally they just lapped this with lapping compound and had no gasket, because back then they didn't have much to make gaskets out of. So I was thinking, geez, you know, a copper gasket would be really cool. Well, look what you can find on eBay if you look around. Perfect fit. So that takes care of that. So I'm going to cut this out on the bandsaw, get it set up in the lathe. Okay, so the trick here is to figure out what diameter to bore this nut to in order to thread it. So you have to figure out what the minor diameter of the thread was. And this is a really oddball thread. It's 1 7/8 11 thread per inch, which doesn't exist in any of the standard threads. So to figure it out, you find what they call the double depth. That is the distance from the top of the thread to the bottom of the groove times 2 would be, because you got one on each side, and then you subtract that from this diameter here. So for an 11 thread per inch, by the charts, it's 118 thousandths. So you subtract 118 from the 1752 here, and you get, or I'm sorry, you subtract 118 from the 1870 here, and you get 1752. So that's going to be the minor diameter, and that's going to be the hole size I'm going to bore this nut to in order to get the thread to come out right. Looking for 1752. One 740 38, 1738. Got a ways to go, yeah. Traffic is something else today. $7.52. 751 and a half. I have the little atlas here set up to cut these internal threads. I swung the compound around to 29 degrees this way. Ground up a 60-degree point tool and set it up in here. And sometimes it's a little hard to tell where the center is if you use your surface gauge here and check it against your tailstock center, and then bring it up here and check it against the point of your tool. Now you're right on center. Okay, it would be 11 threads per inch. I got the thread dial set here with a little bit of backlash so it turns free. We'll move it in until the tool just touches. And I got it slowed down to a reasonable speed with the back gear and the second notch with the belt. Use the thread gauge to line up the tool straight. Now these little atlas lathes are a little more, I wouldn't say complicated, but there's a little bit more involved to setting up the gearing in them, because they've got so many compound gear arrangements to cut so many different thread pitches. If you have one of these lathes, you should really get one of these. I downloaded this off the internet. It's a thread gear setup for the Atlas lathe, and it shows you all the possibilities here through different ranges of gear or thread pitches, where to put these gears. And it's a little different than an old lathe. There's a lot more involved to it. So if you have one of these, it'll be really helpful for you. And then of course in the back they got all the tables and charts and everything. Like this is interesting here, because this has got all the double depth of threads, national threads, by threads per inch here, and then it gives you the pitch, the double depth, the single depth, the depth of the thread, and all the things you need to know for each. Of course, this thread that I'm cutting was totally non-standard, so I just use the information off the 11 threads per inch. Actually, the only thing in the national series is actually it's 11/16 fine, but if you stop and think about it, it's really not that difficult. An 11 pitch thread, the dimensions on it are going to be the same no matter if it's on an 11/16 shaft that you're cutting it into or a 2-inch shaft. Okay, so we're set up by the book. This is a 44 on the screw and a 64 on the stud. And this is just an idler gear. It doesn't do anything except it changes the rotation, but it doesn't matter because you can change it back with this. So got a little bit of play in there. We're set to go. Okay, this is an odd numbered thread, 11 threads per inch, so I can engage on either number or either line, but not both. So I got to decide which it's going to be. So I'm going to engage on the numbers. Okay, so that's scratched it there. And I'll check it with the thread gauge. Make sure it's 11, and it drops right in. 11 threads per inch. Bring it back to the same spot on the cross slide. Give it a couple more. Oh, I missed that one. Wait for the one to come around. This is a slow process and it's going to take a while. Still not quite, it's kind of run off down here at the end. gets up in here into the undamaged part of the thread. It's a little tight. A little loose right there where the threads are worn, but up here where the nut will actually run, it's about right. It's just about zero clearance. There's the finished nut. It's all ready to go back together on the Liley engine when we start assembling it this spring up in the New York shop.